This is The Bagel Report, a podcast exploring Jewish representation and identity in popular culture, with your hosts Esther Kostanowitz and Erin Ben Moshe, and now a production of J, the Jewish News of Northern California. Hey, Erin.
Hey, Esther, how are you?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm getting ready for Passover.
It is Passover once again.
It's funny how it comes around every year and always seems to come up faster every single year.
It really does. And this year we have a very special, maybe treat, maybe curse. You'll decide. Listeners, you tell us what this is to you. But I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it too. And I also know that maybe while there are a lot of people who are our listeners who have watched Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and are as obsessed with it as we are, I also know that there are people who are not. And whether that's because it just didn't appeal to them, or they felt like they were the wrong demographic, or they just missed it, or they don't like musicals, which is something I've heard from somebody I'm no longer friends with, just kidding. But, I think that the opportunity is here for us now because Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is available on Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can catch up whenever you want. It's very watchable. I think it's very entertaining. It has a lot of serious themes as well, but really plays with a lot of Broadway show tunes and themes and styles. So as we approach Passover, I started thinking about what I could do for Passover. And Erin, you reminded me that this is something that we've been trying to do for a while, is to create a Crazy Ex-Girlfriend Haggadah songbook or supplement that uses the songs and the themes of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, but looks at them through the lens of Passover. So
yes,
that's what we're here to do this time.
Mm-hmm.
Erin and I first bonded over our shared love for Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And to give you a little bit of background about what the show is, it is a little bit of a weird show, which everybody knows I enjoy weird. It's the story of a millennial named Rebecca Bunch, who was working too hard at her New York job, making dough, but it made her blue.
So one day she was crying a lot, so she decided to move to West Covina, California, which was a brand new job and a new career. And it also just happened to be where Josh Chan, her camp boyfriend, lived. But that's not why she was there.
At least that's what she told us. Although as the audience, we are fully aware that it is entirely the reason why she moved there. But over the course of the 4 seasons, what started out as the series about a girl chasing a boy to another city because she was unhappy with her life, shout out to Felicity, deepened into a celebration of musical styles, using music as the way to express deep emotion, also celebrating a love of Broadway, of comedy, of slightly raunchy comedy, and in various ways, a love of Judaism, or maybe we should say Jewishness, because it really is very solid Jewish identity, not so much Judaism, but Jewishness.
That's right.
Over the course of the series, there are a number of straight up Jewish songs that we've spoken about before, which illustrate some essential truths and challenges about contemporary American Jewish identity.
So here we are. We are now kind of workshopping our Crazy Ex Haggadah for you. This started in my brain a couple years ago because Esther is very, very good at making Haggadah supplements. We've talked about a lot of them before. And I always thought there was just this great alignment between the themes and things that are addressed in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and the story of the Passover seder and the Passover story, the Exodus as well. And so I thought we need to do a Crazy Ex Haggadah. We have to. And this year we are giving it to you now. And so all of these songs in the show were written by Rachel Bloom, the late Adam Schlesinger, and Jack Dolgen. And there's probably other songwriters, including Esther's friend, Zach Sherwin, who contributed to some of the very Jewy lines to Jap Battle Rap and one of other things, which we will also talk about later in this episode.
Before we start our official list of songs and tell you how we were relating them to Passover, we want to just tell you how we made the list and what this represents for us. So the list that we made, the title or the lyrics of these songs had to reflect an essential element of Passover story or customs. And it was an opportunity for us to look at the songs of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend through the thematic lens of Passover. This is not a song parody Haggadah, although, maybe some point in the future, both of us have that force in our families. So it wouldn't surprise me.
But you can also, so every time we mention a song, you can play this during your seder or whatever. You can stop and play the song, and they're all available on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. You can watch the episodes on Netflix, although I'm not sure how all your guests would feel. But to me, when I was coming up with these songs, it feels like if the Passover Story was a Broadway musical and all the songs were Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, very like jukebox musical, and the heroes and villains of our story broke out into song during various moments. And what would that sound like? And that's what it is.
That's right. And some of them are a stretch, none of them, it's not a direct hit, all of the songs, but these were kind of representative of the whole. And also it's so funny. Like I love these songs so much. And I think that some of them are so random and very unusual. So one of the things that repeats throughout the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend universe is the idea of pretzels as this like kind of symbol of freedom, which I think is so funny considering what, we talk about on Passover with, the matzah being like the bread of affliction. And, before the seder, before Passover even starts, we look for chametz. We look to see if we find pretzels, or other pieces of chametz around the house. And then all of Passover, while we're eating this bread of affliction, we're thinking about after when we can get pizza or something, or a nice soft pretzel from Rebetzel's Pretzels, which is a store that Rebecca opens in season 4 of the series. And they're in that episode, there are 2 pretzels in a showcase that look like Simon and Garfunkel and sing a song that sounds like The Sounds of Silence a little bit. Both of the pretzels are voiced by Adam Schlesinger, who died early during the COVID epidemic. And his death is actually one of the motivating factors behind Rachel Bloom's solo show, which is now touring. So you should catch that if you can. Erin and I saw it in Los Angeles. But this song starts with, "We are merely pretzels. That is all we are. This woman's obsession with us is frankly quite bizarre. We used to simply be a starchy snack that people ate, but now we are a symbol. Such is our twisted fate." And there's more, obviously, but, the idea of her reliance on this symbol as a way to track almost divine providence through her life is something that I just felt like we needed to share this chametz-filled thing before we start our official Crazy Ex-Girlfriend Seder. So now that we have gotten rid of the chametz, we will move forward into hosting a seder. But one of the things that, the reason the seder is called seder is because there's an order. And everybody knows, well, a lot of people know the song with the different parts of the seder that there was a Kadesh or Chag, right? And while we won't necessarily have a song for every stage, I wanted to invoke this getting ready song. It's like it's a getting ready song, which is another song from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, the sexy getting ready song. But this is the Seder getting ready song, but it is to the Kadesh or Chatz song. So here it goes. It's obviously going to be up for a Grammy any day now, this recording. So just listen and enjoy. We love Crazy Ex and we love Haggadah text. So we Passover listed some songs in case you missed it. It's not perfect, but the themes sometimes fit. If you haven't seen it still, then just Netflix and chill.
I mean, it's like better than Ben Stiller's put on your yarmulke, "It's Time for Yom Kippur" song that he did during the Mark Twain Kennedy Center honors for Adam Sandler last week. So right on.
Thanks. Glad you're in this with me, Erin. So,
always.
Hosting a seder, there's a song in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend called "Having a Few People Over," which is a song by Daryl Whitefeather, who is Rachel's boss at the West Covina law firm. And he's getting his apartment ready for a small party he was having with a few guys. And he expertly prepared platters with an array of garnishes, which he was known for doing back in his college days when he was known as King of the Spread. So the idea of having a few people over, sometimes it's 4 people, sometimes it gets to be more. I know that my brother and sister-in-law are having like 18 to 20 people over the course of the 2 nights.
Oh, wow.
It'll probably be fewer with my family in Jerusalem where I'll be. But, the idea of like preparing platters with garnishes, that's karpas and the seder plate as far as I'm concerned. So you can start with having a few people over.
I love that. And as we move into the seder plate and you look at all of the garnishes, there are a lot of moments in the seder ritual where you are dipping parsley into salt water, or you are using bitter herbs or maror. And these all symbolize something. And a lot of the time they symbolize suffering. And so it brings us to this wonderful Jewish song called Remember That We Suffered. Tova Felcha is in this song. Patti LuPone is in this song with Rachel Bloom, who's playing Rebecca Bunch. They're at a cousin's bat mitzvah. There's a big moment that it's just remember that we suffered. I think one of my favorite parts of the Seder is the fact that even though we are talking about how the Jews became free, we are constantly reminded throughout the Seder that just because you are free doesn't mean someone else is. And it doesn't, just because you have made it out doesn't mean everyone's made it out. So the salt water literally represents tears, and you're not supposed to lick your finger after you do the 10 plagues because you don't get to celebrate the bad things that are happening to other people in order for you to be free. And so it's a really great reminder that indeed we did suffer and others are still suffering. And so I like that it's never lost on us.
Right. I think, that's one of the themes that's been pulled out of the Seder so much recently is the analog between the suffering of the Jewish people in Egypt and suffering of other peoples everywhere. So the idea that we remember our own suffering, not just because we should never get to be happy in the world, which may also be a motivation for some people.
Yes.
There is this trend in Judaism, the reason that this song, Remember That We Suffered, really resonated so deeply with so many people is that Judaism has a lot of these traditions where if you're celebrating something, you also have to take part of it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like you have to take part of the harvest out for the poor. When you're doing Purim, Mishloach, Manot, you also have to do Matanot Le'evyonim. When you're sending packages to your friends, you also have to be providing for the poor. Passover is also like very much themed toward let all who are hungry come and eat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's an act of empathy, of extreme empathy, of bringing people into your home who wouldn't ordinarily be there and providing shelter and nutrition and things like that. And what's great is that in addition to dipping parsley in salt water, you can also have a nice tapenade that reminds us of bricks and mortar, which is delicious.
Who doesn't love that?
That's charoset, my friends, just in case you know it by its street name. There's a new pharaoh who rises in Egypt. This is where all the troubles begin for the Jewish people. And he hardened his heart, right? That's one of the things that we read about the pharaoh. In Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, there's a song called He's the New Guy, which is a song that Rebecca sings to try to convince her coworkers at her law firm to turn against their new boss. And, it's like, it starts like, he's the new guy. I don't trust him. So Pharaoh is the new guy and we don't trust him. And there's reason to not trust him. Then we move on to the 4 children, which over the years has been, of course, like a very rich playground for people artistically and also writing wise, where people can imagine the 4 children as, 4 fruits and vegetables or 4 types of newspapers or 4 of anything really that have different characteristics, but are part of a set. So in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, there is a boy band made up of 4 Joshes, which is a song that Rebecca imagines is being sung to her by 4 different versions of her boyfriend, Josh Chan. Each one of the personalities is a little different in a boy band kind of way. One of them is like the sensitive, one of them is the smart, and all of the characters have had all of the 4 personalities at various points over the course of the 4 seasons, which speaks to the temporary nature of some states of being. Like, while you might always be who you are, coming in contact with certain people and having certain experiences can change you, and you can shift from having one personality trait be dominant to another personality trait being dominant. So that I think was one of the things that we always talk about when we talk about the four children, is that they may not be four separate children, that we might have all of them in us, and that those parts of the personality might be dominant at various points in our life. And how do we reconcile our role in the seder and Passover in Jewish life with those states of being?
Mm-hmm. And it's also cool because there's 4 seasons of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And it's cool because it's not just one character is on a journey. Yes, Rachel Bloom's Rebecca Bunch is on a journey and she changes every season. And so does the theme song. But every character that she's with is also going through a transformation. So we can't even say like Rebecca is the wicked child or Josh is the simple son. Like all of them at one point in another during the series could have embodied one of the 4 children, which is also very cool for a TV show.
100%. I think that the reason that this has been an area of play is that really it's open to the interpretation of whoever's reading it, like how they're going to define all of these things. And there's been much made of the fact that the things that are said about the wise son and the wise child and the wicked child is that it's kind of like the quote that they use is very similar, that what may be different about it is not the curiosity behind it, but the tone, whether you ask something hoping to be disproven or trying to stir up something, or if you're actually, trying to ask something constructively. The other thing that I'm thinking about, just like in this moment with you, Erin, like if you want to tease it out with me, I would love your help with this.
Let's do it. It is a workshop.
That's right. It is a workshop. So, we're talking about the 4 children. We also talk about the 4 questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Manish Tana,
right?
And that first session, and so I think for us, that would be like, how is this series is different from all other series, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, we could ask that. How is Rebecca different from all other West Covinanians, people from West Covina? But she comes in very different. She's like very big city, East Coast, Jewish, into a space where there is not that for her to land in. So she is in some ways a fish out of water. She is the knight who is different from all the other knights, essentially.
Mm-hmm. She is. I think the show is different than all other shows because all other shows that have music are intentionally using music in a theatrical way. Like Glee, had music every episode, but they were all aware of the music. This is a show where the music is there and it lands. It's a show you believe is a musical show without it being so obnoxious. Now, not everyone feels that way, but if you compare it to Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, which we did not very much care for, like those 2 shows are theoretically similar. We had high hopes for one because of how successful we thought Crazy Ex-Girlfriend was. But it shows that it doesn't always land. A musical show where not everybody is aware of the music is a very different thing. And it's, while other shows may not have musical moments that land, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend does.
Right. In some ways, I'm disappointed in us for not doing this before we got on air. We don't have it fully fleshed out, so we're also open to interpretations from some of our listeners who are also Crazy Ex-Girlfriend fans. But, on all other nights, we eat all kinds of vegetables. And now we just have this sarcastic maror that is very harsh and acerbic. And I think that in some ways, maybe that could be read as a clash between the New York City Rebecca and who's the sarcastic or acerbic one, and the other local vegetables, local produce, which is the rest of the characters on the show who are in West Covina. Also, the idea that on all other nights we don't dip, and now we dip twice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the idea also is that Rebecca is also dipping into various communities and relationships several times. And so it's a different way of living than the people who she finds there live. So I think that there's something to be said. Again, it's not this one has a bunch of rough edges, but it's just because we're discovering it now while we're studying this text in this way.
Yeah, I dig it. So let's talk about some of the sons. I know we touched on them in the beginning, but I think we have a song for at least one of the children.
Yes, we do. For the wicked child, there is a a moment in the series where Rebecca's brother Tucker comes to town, and he's a super ambitious kid who wants to be a child star. And he tells us this in the musical performance called I Want to Be a Child Star, very well named. And he talks about how he lies awake at night just dreaming of his big break, and that he wants to dance and sing, and he only ever wanted one thing. And he says, I want to be a preteen Hollywood train wreck, a cautionary tale. I want the kind of fame that'll warp my brain and eventually land me in jail. I want to sue my parents for emancipation, freedom, after they get caught stealing from me. And so he talks about how it's going to be bad. It's going to be sad. I'm ready for my childhood to end. I want to have agents and assistants instead of actual friends. So like, this is like a tale of ambition, which we could compare to Pharaoh, but it's also a tale of shirking the things that you were raised to think are important in favor of something else. And so that seems very much like wicked child energy.
And to add on to that, we get a double song for this one. I feel like I'm a Good Person is a really great song for this moment too, because even though the lyrics of the song, I'm such a good, real good person, I'm a good person through and through, everything she's actually doing in life is against that. She's pushing people, she's ignoring people, she's neglecting people, she is preventing people from living.
But she says her nickname is Mother Teresa Luther King.
Yes. And it's so funny.
It's a great song because it's also like somebody who's demanding that people call her a good person, and she's being a horrible person while she's doing it.
And she's so clearly insecure about not being a good person that she's overcompensating. And so it also makes me laugh because some people it's always funny to me when I was at Hebrew school, growing up, we were always going through the 4 children. And there was always one kid who wanted to be the wise son, who wanted to be the good child. It always made me laugh because everything they did always contradicted that. And it's like, why do you so badly want to be good? And yet everything you do contradicts it. And so this song makes me laugh. It goes to the people who think they're the wise, but they're actually the wicked. And maybe they should check themselves before they wreck themselves. Am I right?
That's right. Yes. Check pre-wrecking. I also wanted to just point out that if you watch the series on Netflix, you can see the live show, the live special featuring a lot of the songs that they aired after the last episode aired on TV. That features the cast. Oh, yeah. It's part of the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend 4 seasons set that they have on Netflix.
I love that.
While she's saying, I'm a good person, she goes into the crowd and she like forces people to tell her she's a good person. But 2 of the people that she goes up to are her parents. They're in the crowd. I don't know if you remember this.
No.
But her parents are in the crowd and she goes, am I a good person? Just tell me I'm a good person. And so her father goes, I'm a good person. And she goes, no, tell me I'm a good person. And he's like, I'm a good person. And she's like, no, say you're a good person. And she's like, okay, you're a good person. But the point is that she involves her parents in this. And then she goes, oh, thank you. Like as if she's being modest about it. So it's definitely a fun watch and much recommended.
10 out of 10. Moving on, next page.
Please turn the page. So the next thing that's up is everybody's favorite annoying song that gets in your head and doesn't leave for days and weeks is Dayenu, right?
Oh, yes.
Dayenu is famously says it would have been enough if we had just received this gift from God. If God had only taken us out of Egypt, if God had only given us the Torah, if God had only taken us across the Red Sea, not in that particular order, that it would have been enough. Some people translate that as it would have been more than we deserved, which is also part of it. We definitely, as a people, we're not always gracious acceptors of gifts of freedom.
Yes.
So,
and before you give the Crazy Ex version alternative,
yes.
I do want to give a shout out to one of maybe the best crossovers, the accidental crossover in Passover history, in my opinion, which is in the Hamilton Haggadah, which is from a few years ago. There is a song that would be enough, and someone did turn that into Dayenu. And I love when that happens.
Yes, as soon as Broadway encroaches into the seder, Erin's on board 100%.
10 out of 10. Okay, but what is the Crazy Ex version?
The analog, yeah. So there's a song called After Everything I've Done for You That You Didn't Ask For, which is performed by Paula, who's kind of Rebecca's best friend and local kind of mother surrogate, who is more nurturing than her really challenging Jewish mother figure is, which is another story we'll get to another time. But when Paula finds out that Rebecca has had an affair with this guy, Greg, Paula is furious at Rebecca because Paula was very invested in the story of Rebecca and Josh Chan getting together.
Mm-hmm.
And she has done a lot of weird, like kind of borderline shady work investment in like making her and Josh happen. And so it's kind of like an escalating list of things that Paula has done for Rebecca that Rebecca doesn't necessarily know about. And it's kind of like a Rose's Turn kind of song from, was that?
Gypsy.
From Gypsy, right? Where she's like, now it's my turn. It's Paula's turn.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, after everything I've done for you. And Rebecca says that I didn't ask for. And then Paula just continues about like, do you have any idea the work you're undoing after everything I've done for you that you didn't ask for? I broke into Josh's old high school and made copies of all his grades. I bumped into Lourdes, Josh's sister, at Starbucks and insisted you be a bridesmaid. I blackmailed Valencia's boss, so now I control when she teaches, like all of these things that are really, really like kind of like above and beyond, and nothing that that Rebecca asked for. So, I think that that's a really interesting parallel to think about, that, what did the Jewish people really ask for and what did they get? And then what were they, how did they process all of the receipt of all of these gifts and all these steps in the process of emancipation and going from slavery to freedom? So, the title alone, after everything I've done for you that you didn't ask for, I wouldn't be surprised if God breaks that out on us at some point in the future.
I just also want to mention that the first sentence, the first line of Dayenu, the English-ish translation, one of them is, if God had brought us out of Egypt and had not inflicted judgment upon the Egyptians, it would have been sufficient. Like that would have been enough. Like he could have just brought us out. Did he need the plagues? Did he need the killing of the firstborn? Like that's a lot. It's heavy. And I think it's a great kind of dark twist of after everything I did for you that you didn't ask for. I love it.
100%. I love that. And I think, not to just take an aside and talk to our listeners for a minute, but hey guys, I think that like what we're saying here is that you can take the lens of Passover and apply it to other things, and you can take other things and apply them to the lens of Passover. And really it's about the mind being open to interpretation. And it's another example of what we try to do here in terms of using popular culture as a lens on Jewish meaning and vice versa. So,
totally.
And now back to our show. So after everything I've done for you that you didn't ask for, there's a part in the Haggadah where they argue how many plagues there are, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know that there are 10 plagues, but really, are there 10 plagues? And, God says it was in an outstretched hand and the hand has 5 fingers on it. So like, it's really 10 plagues times 5, and that's 50 plagues. And then like, there's like a ton of discussion about this as rabbis keep rabbinating about it, about the kinds of how many miracles it must have been that God performed in order to redeem the Jewish people from Egypt. All of this math reminds me of the math song from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is the math of love triangles. Rebecca is in a kind of a triangle between these two guys, and she tries to figure it out in a musical number that is supposed to remind everybody of the Marilyn Monroe performance in Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend.
Mm-hmm.
So it's her just acting ditzy about, the love triangles. And she's also got like a bunch of math professors who are her backup dancers and singing along as chorus. And they sing like, a triangle is a polygon with 3 edges and 3 vertices. Take the base times the height, cut that in half, and you'll find the area of the surfaces. All of these math instructions just make her head spin. And she just reverts into this like really ditzy space where she's like, she starts making math puns without actually absorbing any of the things that they're saying. And they call her out on it. And it's a funny song. So that was the math of love triangles, I think, is a parallel to the math of the conversation between the rabbis arguing over how many plagues there are.
I dig it. I think it's funny because I've never heard of is it 50? Is it 10? I just know that's a lot of plagues. It's a lot of plagues. and we always try to have at our seder, like the plagues are a big deal because someone reads them in Hebrew and then someone reads them in English. And then sometimes we have props and we'll have squirting frogs and it gets out of hand because we're all adults now. We've had modern day plagues. So I love that there's a complicated numbers to this that reminded you of the math of love triangles where is this a cute? No, I'm cute. And it's like, let's just make fun of whatever it is because the meaning, let's not lose the meaning.
Right. One could argue 10 is actually a lot of plagues.
10 is enough.
And there's maybe no need to make it in the hundreds. Right.
It would have been enough to just have 10 that impacted a lot of people.
In terms of plagues, I also want to call out the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend song called The Darkness.
Yes.
One of the themes of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is also coping with an increasing awareness of her own mental illness, which she's tried to treat when she was in New York, and the medications and whatever weren't really working. But at one point in West Covina, Rebecca realizes that the longest relationship that she's had in her life is the one with depression and darkness. And it's a reminder of the quality of darkness, whether it's literal or figurative, that it's terrifying, as it must have been for the Egyptians and also, frankly, the Jews, because, during the plague of darkness, they didn't have light, I don't think. I mean, I should look that up. But, being submerged into unexpected darkness is devastating. And it makes you think that you're never going to see light again. That's really the metaphor that she's working with in terms of her depression that has been at her side her whole life. So I think that one of the things that the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend does really well is is include some of these stories of whimsy and, light and love and quirky bedroom farce kind of stuff, but also really digs deep into the ikar, the essence of the matter, and lets us imagine what it's like to say that the longest relationship in your life is the one you have with darkness.
Yeah. One of the moments of the Passover Seder that I often think about, and this is just because I am myself and I also watch Prince of Egypt every year, and I think they do a really great job, musicalizing the Passover Seder story, or the Exodus. I think about, okay, what if we saw Pharaoh lose everything? Like, I know what you're thinking. He's the villain, right? But like, there's this moment in Prince of Egypt where Pharaoh, like the 10th plague has happened. It's that moment where he finally has lost everything, knows it's serious, and just tells the Jews to go. He tells the Jews to just go before he changes his mind and he's angry and then he charges after them. There is this in-between moment of, what have I done? What have they done? And I'm angry. And so I think this is a moment for me to introduce one of my favorite songs of the show, which is You Ruined Everything, You Stupid B-Word. It's a family show. Even though the Passover story is very not family friendly. You ruined everything, you stupid B-word. I wonder, it can be used two different ways. It could be used as the Jews feeling angry toward Pharaoh and saying, you ruined everything and you deceived the people you love. That's, but it could also be like one of these Broadway moments where he's sitting in his tomb or wherever by himself and he's self-reflecting and he's realizing that he ruined everything. And I love this song because it comes as this moment where she's realizing that she's lied and manipulated the man she didn't or did come to West Covina for. She betrayed herself, she betrayed her friends, and she's alone. She's essentially, no one else is there for her except for herself. And so she comes out to this like all I can think about is this like 1990s diva moment. Like this, there's always that song of Celine Dion or Barbara Streisand or Whitney Houston. They're coming out and you hear the piano keys and everyone starts cheering because she goes, yeah, you know this song. We've been here before. And she's like telling everybody in this fake concert moment to sing with her. And I think it is such a great song because it makes fun of itself. And also it's a voice of self-reflection that she is so self-deprecating that she knows she ruined everything. And she's calling herself, I'm just going to say the word here, curse word warning, you stupid bitch. You ruined everything. Like it's so great. And I wonder what that would look like if like a Pharaoh character sang it in a moment of like just being alone. There's no one else. You know, Pharaoh's advisors aren't there. He can finally be real with the fact that like he has no slaves anymore. He has no family members anymore because they were killed. All of his people have been put through the ringer because he just wanted to keep enslaving people. Like it's a crazy thing to have a Pharaoh, exist and have a vulnerable moment like that. So
yeah,
that's what I think
that
about.
There could be like a great dramatization of that kind of moment of awareness of one's own complicity in a situation. In Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, I Ruined Everything is also very much about negative self-talk and about the voices that live rent-free in your head and speak up when something happens, place blame on yourself when that may in fact not be the case. One of the things that I think we talked about this before, but like Rachel Bloom is the like kind of the driving creative force behind this show. And she also plays Rebecca Bunch, which is why I referred to Rebecca as Rachel before, because it's RB. It's all very similar. But one of the things that she released on a comedy album a while back was it was a press conference for the voices that live in her head. It was like, why are you so terrible? Why did you do that? Those kinds of self-doubt, and negative self-talk things that are happening. So that's really one of the central reads on I Ruined Everything. But, I also want to use that opportunity to transition to another song that was also a candidate for one that the Pharaoh could sing to himself somewhat self-reflectively, is a song called I'm the Villain in My Own Story, which we're thinking about using for The Wicked Child, but we already had a couple of them for The Wicked Child. So I'm the Villain in My Own Story is also like one of those unusual things that it was an unusual moment of self-awareness for Rebecca, as she has been pursuing Josh Chan basically at all costs, and then realized that the stuff she was doing was really shady. She hears music in her head, as she often does, and she's like, boy, this music is ridiculously sinister. And then she looks in the mirror and realizes she's kind of like the witch from Snow White, essentially.
Yes. And it's this great moment. And she does this a lot where she's like, okay, am I the Cinderella or am I Cinderella's mom? Am I Cinderella or am I the Wicked Witch? And it's such an interesting way to navigate like where you are in your life. And it's something I've never thought about until I started looking into her comedy. Just the fact that she is the villain of her own story and she personifies all the things that make her a villain, I think is a great turning point. And it also like still is a journey. Like it's not like the episode after that she completely changes it. Like it still sets her on a new path. And I think that's so funny. And I love that for Pharaoh. I love that he'll look at himself and he'll just see himself because he doesn't even need like a wicked stepmother angle. Like that's it. He is that angle.
I mean, I think that that's always interesting to try to humanize a villain and give them their moment of self-recognition or self-justification. One of the things that I appreciate is the story of Wicked.
Oh, yes.
Which is the story of Elphaba, the Wicked Witch of the West, and how she became the Wicked Witch of the West. So it's not necessarily about reading The Wizard of Oz with any kind of empathy. It's kind of its own prequel story, an origin story. I always enjoy an origin story. Like, how did the Pharaoh become the Pharaoh? What does he think he's doing? And how is it impacting other people? And is there any awareness that it's impacting people negatively? I always enjoy the idea of trying to imagine somebody who we think we know in one context as being completely in another context. So that's one of the reasons I love the villain in my own story.
And if you'll indulge me for like half a second, in college, I took a Genesis class where we literally just read the entire book of Genesis. One of the things that was really fun to read is the very last sentence of Genesis and then the very first sentence of Exodus are completely different. And it's what makes maybe the Torah the coolest story of all time, because the ending story, Joseph, right? Joseph ends Genesis, and Joseph's Pharaoh was great. And the first sentence roughly of Exodus is there is a new Pharaoh, one that did not know Joseph. So already setting up the idea that this Pharaoh time has passed and we do not know how helpful that the Jews were and how important they were in the Jewish society and helping determine famine and all these things. This guy is a different guy. And I know we're already past that. We already had that moment up there, but I think it helps. It is kind of like this wicked moment, the moment of self-reflection where it's like, even his ancestors knew like what, a different reality. It could have been different, right? There are times where Jews and Egyptians could coexist, but this guy's choices led to the destruction and the moving and all the plagues and all of these things. And I what a great story. What a great storytelling mechanism that is.
Yeah. Thank you, Rabbi Erin.
Thanks.
That was
Anytime.
really lovely.
Anytime. Have it help. I know it's too Jewish.
Right.
Everyone
that's
likes
my
when
time. Shabbat shalom.
I know
Right.
everybody likes when I just, throw out funny little things about pop culture, but that's something that I always think about because it's right there. It's right there. They just want you to look at the story and then,
Now, the question I have is, why did the Pharaoh not know the story of how Joseph kind of saved Egypt during a famine?
It's a great question because on the tombs, don't they have all their history just like written out for them, right? Like all they had to do was kind of go back and look at the pyramid and go, here we are.
Well, maybe they were just like, the library is so far.
It'll take me years to get there. Forget it.
Right. I have to walk around the Sphinx. It's really just a hassle. There's always traffic at the Sphinx.
It's always under construction,
There's no place to park. I mean, it's just... So, yeah, I mean, I think that the lesson I'm learning from that is also about Jews and Jewish characters existing in and being represented on screen. So I think that proper representation of Jewish people or any ethnic or cultural minority on screen helps to acquaint people with those people who they may not have access to on a regular basis. So I think that what if the new Pharaoh who had hardened his heart and did not know Joseph, what if he had known Joseph? Like, how would that have shifted this entire narrative?
Yeah, he wouldn't have been the villain of his own story. And then, stay with me in my brain. After the last plague, before Pharaoh has his moment, we have to see Moses negotiating one last time because he keeps going back. He's like the union workers in the school district. They keep coming back and working for negotiations. Let my people go. All the plagues have happened. And he's saying like, I gotta go. We gotta get out of here. Let us go. Yeah. And so it reminds me of the song that Greg sings called, Curse Warning. It was a shit show. And he's basically listing, stay with me, Esther. It's a technical term. It's a technical term. It's a word, it's a song, whatever. So in this song, Greg is convincing Rebecca that they are no good together, that this relationship is not sustainable. It was a shit show. And it's sung in the tune of My Way, Frank Sinatra, and it's so good, and it's a very funny song. But then I wonder, like, if Moses were singing this song to Pharaoh as the last plea, and I want to say some words from this song, like, this thing we had was not just bad; it was a shit show. I thought of staying. It is, enticing, but I can't believe what I'm sacrificing. But let's get real. We know the deal. So, darling, let's not tiptoe. This thing we had, was not just bad. It was a shit show. And like, you can't undo, you can't make amends, your dysfunction. We're Jerry Springer, not Casablanca. Like, it's just, they're adding all these layers of why this relationship cannot work out. And this is like, I think the last time we ever hear from Greg before he leaves, because he's going to find himself or going to do something because he can't be in West Covina anymore. So he's leaving.
It's his exodus from West Covina.
Yes, we love it. Oh, yes, you have it right here in this notes. Very good. It's just a great song as a final, I did it my way. And I imagine Moses may have said that. And that's what won him over. And Pharaoh says, yes, you can go. And then Pharaoh has his little, like, you ruined everything, you stupid bitch moment. And that's how it went in my head. That's how that Passover story went. But now we're at the part of the Seder where they actually leave. They get to leave. They leave. Oh, wait, no, I'm just kidding. We have not left yet. They have to do something first. So they've gotten the okay to leave. That's where we are. Right.
And very famously, this is also like not 100% chronological. So read this alongside a Haggadah.
This is like my family Seder. We skip ahead and then all of a sudden we forget where we are and we don't know what page we're on.
Whatever page you're on is the right one. That's a very California thing to say. It's like, just the universe wants you to be on the page where you are.
Correct.
As the Jews were given permission to leave, famously, they did not have time for their bread to rise, right? Mm-hmm. So they had the dough to rise to make bread. So what they did is it became matzah, which is what we eat on Passover, as most of you probably know. The bread of affliction, flat cracker, nightmare, whatever you want to call it, whatever your shorthand is for matzah in your house. And there is a quality of matzah that people complain about that is related to digestion of said matzah. And so, especially Jews who are known for having maybe sometimes rebellious digestive systems, let's just say, the idea of eating a lot of matzah is probably going to back you up a little bit. So that's a technical term also. But in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Valencia, who is Josh's ex-girlfriend, sings about having found a purpose and decides to spread the word about it. But the entirety of the song is basically a long curing constipation joke, and how she used to have something in her. There's a rumbling within me, something I just can't ignore. I thought I could contain it, can't hold it in anymore. This is gross. It started as a trickle, loose and undefined. Now it's starting to solidify into something we can all get behind. This is my movement. Can't stop this movement. It's coming out fast in a powerful blast from deep inside of me, like an explosion. So that's really charming. But it's also written in kind of like a very power ballad. I found my purpose kind of way. And so that's going to be paired with matzah, just because it's basically an extended constipation has been cured joke.
I like this. This was one where I was like, I don't know. And I'm glad I heard your explanation, because now it makes a little more sense. I saw it in the doc and I was like, curious.
Yeah. I mean, we have said repeatedly, this is, some of these are a bit of a stretch, but, with the idea of,
I dig it.
The digestive system kind of reminded me of the whole thing. Anyway.
Okay, so now we are leaving Egypt. We've taken the matzah, we've gotten the semi-okay from Pharaoh, and now we are on our way out.
And while Pharaoh was originally inclined to hold on to all the Jews, the plagues convinced him to send them out. Similarly, Mrs. Chan kicks her son Josh Chan out of their house after he has overstayed his welcome with a song called Get Your Ass Out of My House.
Mm-hmm.
So talks about how he just needs to get out. And believe me, although Mrs. Chan still loves Josh very much, Pharaoh maybe did not love the Hebrew slaves so much, but it's the thematic of just get the heck out of here. Just you go.
Yes. And now that we are, okay, this is one of my favorite songs. I think I've said that already a couple times, but this is one of, I'm so glad you put this one in here, because now what happens, right? They're walking, they're like, we're going. They took everything they could carry, and then they get stuck at this sea. And they go, oh, anyone bring a boat? No, we don't have boats in the desert. Okay, Moses, what are we going to do? And then with an outstretched hand and an arm and whatever, he takes the staff and he hits it on the ground, and God splits the sea. Holy cow. Could you imagine such a sight? I don't No, if
Right.
I could. What a
And
crazy
they walk
thing.
through on dry land. It's very magical.
Yes. And then in Prince of Egypt, you see like they're walking and they see whales. I didn't even know whales were in the sea. That's so neat. And they're walking and they're walking. And then all of a sudden they look back and they're like, whoa, well, we got to go faster because Pharaoh changed his mind. So they're walking and they're walking quickly. And before, there was like an urgency there and they were just walking and exploring. Like I imagine that, there's a song that could go really well with this, because sometimes you're walking and you're in line and you're stuck and it's going slow and you're trapped in a line with someone you don't really want to be trapped in a line with.
So one of the things I think about with every time we talk about the leaving of Egypt, I always think about whether all the Jewish people got along when they were traveling out of Egypt. So like, what was the mood? Like, were people panicking and frantic? Were they just thank God, any place is better than here, just kind of jubilant about it? Were they anxious? I mean, given our genetics, I would say probably anxiety was present that day. But I always wondered, what if I were being taken out of Egypt? One of the things that we say in the seder is that we are supposed to look at ourselves in every generation as if we ourselves had been redeemed from Egypt. So what if I had been redeemed from Egypt, but when we were leaving, I got stuck in line next to that annoying guy from down the block in Goshen, which is the area of Egypt where the children of Israel lived. But it might be the worst road trip of my life, even though it was miracle, yes, and leaving slavery, good. But this guy, one of the more brilliant songs is Trapped in a Car with Someone You Don't Want to Be Trapped in a Car With.
Yes.
And so I view this as crossing the Red Sea with people you don't want to be crossing the Red Sea with. Trapped in a Car pairs up the main cast in pairings of folks who are not generally paired together for scenes, and then trap them in cars with each other. It's illustrated musically by a medley of Beach Boys sounding tunes that accompany their complaining. And I think that it's really just a wonderful song to think about, because I think we've all been there on a road trip where we're trapped in a car. With people we don't want to be trapped in a car with.
Yes.
So I think that was probably true for not just crossing the Red Sea, but also being in the desert for 40 years. What if you got stuck next to the same guy for 40 years? It's just super annoying. Or you manage to move away from that guy and then all of a sudden he's back because you see him collecting manna and you're like, oh, that guy.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just revealing too much about myself and how I feel about other people. But
no, you're not alone. And I think this is great. And I think sometimes when you have 50 people seders, I think sometimes you could also be trapped at a seder you don't want to be trapped at a seder with. And I think this song is applicable for many, many moments of the seder, especially the Passover story.
Great. Erin, I know that you've got a song to share with us.
Yes.
That you actually use in your family seder.
Yes, whether they like it or not, this next song is in our seder. A couple of years ago, my family, we wanted to make an abridged Passover seder, Haggadah. We used the Maxwell House one for a long time, and there was just a lot of big words and not very conversational moments in the traditional Haggadah, and we wanted to make it more family friendly and have some of the jokes that we've always intercut and interjected. So we've created a family-ism Passover Haggadah that we've used. And we did it during the pandemic. And so because no one could really use books, we were all kind of virtual. My cousin and I made a PDF version where you can insert links and GIFs and things like that. And so one of the things is we retold the Passover story in a funny, dorky, pop culture-y family way. And at the very, very end, when they are crossing the sea and they are, going to Egypt, the Jews are finally free. We play this song from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is, "We'll never have problems again. It's only smooth, smooth sailing from now on." And this song comes in the show when Josh and Rebecca have gotten back together and they've kind of just forgotten everything that they ever had to get through to get to this moment. And they're just in a disco type, boogie nights, boogie fever, we'll never have problems again. This is the greatest
Solid
day.
Gold Dancers, if that's a reference for anybody who's listening to this. It looks like a Solid Gold. There's these platforms where people are dancing in bell bottoms and it's very disco-y.
Right. And it's really funny. And then there's someone also in this song with them who's kind of just like popping their bubble. Like, are you guys kidding me? Like, hello, like, what are you talking about? And, the song jokes like, do you remember when we used to have problems? Oh yeah, that was annoying. Like, it's just really funny and very obviously like sugarcoating all potential fear and problems and any form of problem solving or coping mechanism moving forward. And obviously the Jews don't never have problems again. There are only problems to come and challenges to come for them. So I like to end it that way as a joke.
I think, We'll Never Have Problems Again is also a song that shows you that denial isn't just a river in Egypt.
I love it.
I'm missing the guy who usually plays the snare drum is not here right now. So just
budget cuts.
Anyway.
Yes.
Budget cuts. Yes.
So, and it's never actually landed. Quite honestly, like they'll see it, they'll read the hyperlink, We'll Never Have Problems Again, and they laugh, but they don't always click on it. But this year, I'm going to have a boombox with me. So I will have it at the ready at our seder, at least one of them. I don't know if we'll do it both nights, but it will land this year. And if not, I'll just give up. But
I'm just so impressed you have a boombox.
It's not a boombox. It might be like my Alexa or my, little speaker, little thingy. Okay.
It's the opposite of a boombox.
It's the opposite of a boombox. But also, okay, so now that the Passover story is over, there are still other elements of the Seder in which I think songs are relevant from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. So one, there's a part of the Seder that happens every year, and my non-Jewish friends are always very confused by it. You have to open the door for Elijah, and then you fill his cup of wine, but you never actually drink his cup of wine. And Elijah used to scare the crap out of me as a child. I would run upstairs and hide under the bed because I was terrified of letting like some spirit into our house. I never really understood it, and I never really enjoyed it. But over the years, I've understood it a little more. And so it's made me think of, wow, this guy kind of goes to every single house during a Passover Seder just to kind of check up on everybody, make sure everyone's doing okay. There's some also connections to like brisses where he's involved. I don't really get that. But, you open the door and he's kind of making his way in theoretically to every Seder in the world. It reminded me of the song that Paula sings in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, which is his status is preferred. Now stay with me. I know I may have lost you, but I mean, it's very cool. He drinks French wine. He travels all the time. And at the airport, he cuts the line. There's no extra charges in his life because he's elite. He's silver elite, executive silver elite. His status is preferred. The song is kind of like this jazzy, he's like,
you call it like a torch song?
Yeah, a torch song is when like you kind of stand there and sing and there's like a big spotlight on you and there's a big band. Kind of like You Ruined Everything, You Stupid Bitch. They're like these very I think Ella Fitzgerald did it in a movie and that's where it comes from. But like there are these moments in movies or in shows where it's just kind of you standing and singing and it's usually a song about love or lust or something. And this is the style of that. And she's obviously talking about a man she's attracted to, not Elijah the prophet. But I think it could be useful here because this is like a very important guy. He's on a journey. He's doing all these things. He's sophisticated. He's eager to, I think one of the words I saw in like describing him, he's zealous to like make right and stay on this earth and like do good still, even though he's not here. And that feels like preferred status to me.
Yeah. So it sounds like he's like Santa Claus, but he's also an Avenger.
Yes. I did explain it to someone before. I'm like, it's Jewish Santa, but it's not really that.
Right. Well, Jewish Santa just comes to your door and asks you for wine and then it says, I just want to make sure you're okay, and then leaves.
That's kind of what he does. Yeah. And now I'm thinking of it. We don't have a real song for Miriam because we also set a cup for Miriam. And Miriam is Moses' sister and she's the coolest. She is the reason we have song and there was optimism in this story because as they were walking through, maybe some people were stressed out and overwhelmed. And Miriam was just shining with positivity and playing music. And it makes me, there are a couple fun girl group songs in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, but I think the one that like tonally matches what I imagine Miriam was playing as she was walking through is Women Gotta Stick Together. Esther, do you remember this song? It's kind of ironic because it's coming from a character who definitely doesn't have a lot of female friends and definitely doesn't know the value of true women relationships. But some of the lyrics are, women gotta stick together, females helping females for the greater good, sisters helping sisters. It's called sisterhood. We have power to make change. Like this girl should pluck her eyebrows and those jeans should be exchanged. Like it's still kind of like one of those like it's still never good. It's too good to be true songs. Like, even though she's saying like she's preaching, like it's very, oh my God, who is the queen of like sing Shabbat song session guitar, like Jewish rock stars?
Debbie Friedman.
Yes. Oh my God. Shame on me. But it feels very like Debbie Friedman-esque, except the words again are kind of like tacky, like indulgent, fake female friendships. Like this song is clearly someone who's never had a woman friend before or a true female friendship. And obviously it evolves more as the show goes on. But this one I just kind of thought was funny because tonally it matches.
Right. I was actually like crossing my fingers that you were going to, that's not a thing we do as Jews, but I was actually thinking that you might say that it's the moment is me for Miriam.
Yeah.
Because, I feel like Miriam gets she's kind of like a second-class citizen to Elijah. Like not everybody does a Miriam's cup. And so, I could see her coming in being a little sarcastic. The moment is me is a song from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend where the very sarcastic friend Heather is preparing to graduate from college.
Mm-hmm.
And she realizes that she's about to sing a very cliched song about how it's her moment and all of that. And so her song goes, what does the future hold? What will tomorrow bring me? What story will be told? What song is gonna sing me? And then she's all these cliches. This is my time to shine. Step out of the line. Throw open all the windows. Might be an uphill climb, but I just got to find out what the end of this rainbow. And so she's like hating everything that she's saying, but she's powerless to stop it. So I feel like in some ways, the idea of Miriam kind of showing up at the seder after Elijah had his whole like thing. She's like, all right, I guess I'm here. But, I am this moment and this moment is me. So
yes, I like that song better.
This is a real-time analysis that I just did.
I like it because that one's way more positive and she should have a more positive song. But there are lots of like great girl group songs. So I feel like I just want to dedicate them all to Miriam and the women in this story. Because also Moses' mom is a badass who, took a risk by just sending baby Moses down a river and hoping for the best. And she's very brave. And I think she passed that on to Miriam, who was also very brave and pushed Aaron to also be very brave. So woohoo. Yay.
Well, now
women.
that I'm thinking about it, Get Your Ass Out of My House could also be the story of Yocheved putting Moses in a basket and getting him the heck out of the house. I'm just thinking about this now. Now my brain started. It's not going to stop.
Okay.
You can also say that Yocheved, Miriam, and Batya, the daughter of Pharaoh, are like a girl group.
Yes, the women.
Why not?
You could, all right, here, I'm going to say it. We weren't going to do it, but an honorable mention is let's generalize about men because I feel like the women handled every single situation in this story with grace and logic and bravery. And they just took a chance in order to save lives, never to take away lives. And I mean, between the women who saved Moses or, brought him back, and even Moses' wife in some of these stories are just really cool, saying like, yes, we have to go back and help your people. Like, I think like all these women are very cool. And I think if they were the ones in charge, maybe the outcome would have been different. And so they can just all come over after and drink wine and take one bad thing about one man and apply it to all of them. And there it is.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is that like you're saying, the Pharaoh is the ultimate, general manager of men in Egypt right. And makes this proclamation. And now we really are going back in time that all boy babies should be killed because his, what do they call them? Soothsayers said some sooth to him that did not soothe him. But he was told that a boy, like a a Hebrew baby boy was going to be the end of his rule. So if there are no Jewish baby boys, then, he can rule forever. So he ordered that they all be killed. But there were a couple of Jewish midwives, Shifra and Pua. Their names appear in like the Rashi, I think, the commentary on that particular time frame and for the Jews in Goshen, and they were responsible for saving the babies. So, they and Yocheved are also like a girl group. And I think we don't hear about the men who helped the women save the babies. We only hear about the women who saved the babies. So I think in general, we can generalize that the men were not so helpful. So I think it's a really good call, Erin. I support this.
And, we are the Bagel Report. We like guys, we like girls, but sometimes, maybe if you ever need a rage room moment, like that's a great song to listen to. Moving on. So this one's my bubby's favorite song. She loves it. She waits the entire seder every year to do it. And it's Haggadah. And it's about all the animals. Like my father brought, the camel and the dog and the goat. And it's not a very nice song about animals. The more I grew up, I heard the animals and then I was like, wait, things are happening to these animals and that's not very good. And my brain went to this song called I Go to the Zoo. Nathaniel, who is the new guy in the show, but not in our Passover story. You realize that, whenever he's down or whenever he's stressed out, there's one place that he goes to lift his spirits, and he goes to the zoo. And the zoo is kind of like a Drake song. Like this song is very Drake. Let's take a Drake song and make it about the zoo, which is also great because Drake is Jewish. Woo! But it's a very weird song. I know it's definitely a stretch here, but maybe Nathaniel wouldn't actually like Haggadah because the things that are happening to the animals at the zoo are not so great. But it made me think of that.
Truth. There is a whole menagerie of animals in this song.
There's so many.
None of them come to a good end. So I think we should alert PETA and, people for the ethical treatment of animals will just come right down here and end Haggadah immediately.
I say no, keep Haggadah. But then the last thing that you say, or almost one of the last things you say to end the Seder is next year in Jerusalem. And I feel like it's only fitting that at the end of our Passover Crazy Ex-Girlfriend Haggadah, we say next year in West Covina. It's the first song that we hear in the pilot episode. And it is literally like a Good Morning Baltimore type song, but about West Covina, California. And for people who don't actually know West Covina, they do a great job mapping it out because people say it's like near Los Angeles, which is like a very big understatement. It's like, or an overstatement. It's an overstatement because West Covina is maybe 40 minutes out of LA. So when you think about LA, you think of all the shiny, bright things. And then when you get to West Covina, it's just like blah. So it's very obvious that she's there for a boy. She wouldn't just like leave New York City for a great lawyer job in West Covina. Like it's they milk it up. It's a great song. But it's also very cool because to her, this is the promised land. This is where she's going for this quote unquote religious experience or this total, like, this is like, okay, if let's back in Genesis when like God says to Abraham, like, go to this new place, I'll take you there. Like theoretically in Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, some butter billboard of God, like tells her she needs to go somewhere. And that somewhere is not like the land of Israel. It is West Covina, California.
But it is in some ways a promised land for her.
Yes.
She sees the opportunity there to remake herself and to start anew. And everything that she sees from the second she gets out of the cab thrills her. It's all new. It's all different. Some bench about like a lawyer who is an ambulance chaser and it's in Spanish. She loves that. She loves a giant pretzel. She sees this hot giant pretzel and she's like, I've never seen a pretzel that big. Is like one of the lines that's in this one song that kind of operates as a through line for her and a touchstone, in addition to that butter board that you're talking about. Not the butter boards that TikTok has had. It's like the billboard that's about butter. Like, kind of like, I can't believe it's not butter or whatever.
But the whole line in it is, when was the last time you were happy? advertisements are really ridiculous. And that one is like, when was the last time you were really happy? Here, have some butter. But like it really speaks to her in that moment. And then she runs into Josh Chan, and that's what sets off the entire series. And so it's a great beginning song, which is also fitting because even though we're ending, the Seder with next year in Jerusalem, it's also theoretically starting off a new adventure. Last year, I jokingly said next year in Los Angeles, and now this year, my whole family's coming to Los Angeles for Seder with me.
That's
so I'm
awesome.
very excited, and it's a new tradition and a new thing. And we'll be here as a Jewish people for next Passover as we're celebrating this one, which is very cool.
Right. And I think it's good to end with West Covina also because it features, again, a giant pretzel. We can't have pretzels at our Seder, so we have to have it after the Seder. Maybe a week later after the Seder, but returning to one of the best kinds of chametz you can get, the hot giant pretzel, is a good way to end the Crazy Ex-Girlfriend Seder experience.
Da-da-da!
Da-da-da! So thank you for following along with us on this journey. It really has been a journey from beginning to end. And we're hoping that even if you're not a huge fan of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, or even if you've never seen it, that you've enjoyed our approach. And the years ahead, I hope to have many opportunities for us, or if Erin wants to, for us. If she doesn't want to, then for me to move through the Passover narrative with a different kind of lens, usually and probably inspired by popular culture.
Esther, I hope this is one of many that we get to do where we just take one thing about one thing and apply it
and then make it about everything.
Everything. I didn't mean to do that, but it kind of just happened, didn't it? But yeah, no, that's
lyric.
It's a lyric. That's my favorite thing about Judaism and what we do. It's like, it works. As long as you are connecting to it in a way that makes sense to you, it works. And I'm excited about it. So check out Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, or don't. You can find all the music and all the funny clips on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Netflix. If you're listening to this 4 years in the future and Netflix no longer exists, then that's fun for you.
Yeah, just look for it on Clank.
Or on that like Apple attachment to your brain now. I don't know, but we hope you enjoy this.
I think it's going to be called Clank. I think I just founded the company that's going to replace all those companies.
Well, then Esther can call it and you can go, oh my God, she called it. But we wish everybody a Chag Sameach and a happy Passover and a meaningful Passover.
On our last podcast, we talked about the mazeling, the gimmick of the Mazel Haggadah, of the Mazel Maxwell House Haggadah. And I think we came down kind of hard on it for not being interpretive or, necessarily adding to meaning, especially the Mazel version I found particularly egregious, and I still do, but I wanted to offer a counterpoint opinion. My friend Leah Jones, who has her own podcast called Finding Favorites, and there's another one about candy. I'm not really sure what it's called. I'll have to look that up. But Leah is based in Chicago, and she said when she saw us post about our last episode, she said that she needed to come to the defense of the Maxwell House Haggadah. So I wanted to just read this so that you have an alternate opinion about how important it has been for very many households. So she says, the Maxwell House Haggadah has been distributed every year since 1932 and is very popular in Chicago. For a lot of families, it is their traditional text of the holiday. The Mazel version was essentially just a new cover because you can add it to your stash of Maxwell House Haggadot without having to replace it for everyone. Was it clever marketing? Yes. Was it thoughtful interpretation? No.
I have one right here. This is the one I've used my entire life. We have lived off of Maxwell House Haggadah and the coffee because it was kosher coffee for Passover. So, we also had various versions growing up, but the ones that were always passed around were the Maxwell House. Yeah, even when we adapted our family Seder, we still Xeroxed pages or copied pages from Maxwell because it's easy to use, it's easy to read, it's very simple. And the fact that they're still doing it and they didn't just change their mind. It's very accessible, non-expensive. Oh, totally love Maxwell House Haggadahs. And I think they are very important and accessible for people who want them. Let us know what Haggadahs you're using and why. I love it. I love that every house you go to is never the same one. Everyone has their own thing that works for them. And it's one of my favorite things of like hosting a seder and then going to a seder.
Agreed. In my house, wherever my house is, whether it's my own apartment here in LA, or I'm in New York and New Jersey with my brother, or in Israel with my other brother, none of us have the same Haggadah. Like, we always have different ones around the table. And part of that is, our educational privilege that we know what's in the Haggadah. So we don't necessarily have to have everybody be on the same page. Like, we can literally be on different number pages and share the different insights, the different Haggadot. I always find it such a rich experience. And Haggadot.com is also like a very big part of that. I was actually just looking back through some of the things in my Heroes Haggadah, just remembering stuff that I wrote last year. And there's some stuff I wrote during the pandemic about being, in quarantine or whatever, just being isolated for Passover. It's just having this on the calendar every year really provides an opportunity for us to look at the same text through our lens, however that has changed in the year that followed the last time we looked at the text. So that's the journey.
This has been The Bagel Report, a production of Jay, the Jewish News of Northern California, and a part of the Jew Folk Podcast Network. Thank you to Lev Gringaz, our producer from Jew Folk Inc., David A.M. Walensky and Andrew Essenston, and Danny Lipsky for creating our logo. You can find us wherever podcasts are listened to. Connect with us on social, on Twitter, at Esther K, at Eben Moshe, and at The Bagel Report, on Instagram at Esther Kostanowitz, at Eben Moshe, and TBR the Pod, and by emailing us at thebagelreport@gmail.com. Now go and watch something interesting, and maybe we'll talk about it next time on The Bagel Report.